Welcome everyone to episode 285 of Just Joshing. I am your host, Joshua Penn, and this week's going to be an amazing week. I got to tell you, I have two amazing guests. My current one is Joanna Penn. Now, Joanna is a big international best-selling author. She's a big pillar to the indie writing community. She does a lot of cool things. We have a short but very sweet conversation that I cannot wait to share with you. But yeah, this week is going to be big. I definitely been prepping. The move hasn't been seriously started yet. It starts now. When Worlds Collide has come and gone. I had a blast at When Worlds Collide. I've quietly been delivered my manuscript to my forthcoming novel because why not? Why not just move and release the book at the same time? Because I'm freaking crazy. That's what I am. So that's happening, and I'm really, really excited about that. So, but before we get into all this wonderful stuff, I should point out that right now, Indie Imprint has setting up to release on the Steam store right now, GYATM. I'm hoping that's how I'd say it. It's Dragon Edition. It's basically you are building a colony on Mars. Right now, you can go to their Steam store right now. Indie Imprint has put together a really great little game. I love the fact that they're showing Camp Asimov. That makes me really, really, really happy as a sci-fi fan. But definitely, this game's going to be available in November. You should definitely check it out. All right. So, let's get to our conversations, shall we? Just Joshing is sponsored by Indie Imprint. Indie Imprint brings your creations to life. They believe in indies helping indies, and they have been known to contribute to everything from game jams to NaNoWriMo and everything in between. As a creator, you just bring your work to them, whether you're a writer, musician, or video game designer, or whatever the case may be, and they will help you format, proof, and distribute your project to a variety of different avenues. For more information, check them out at info@indieimprint.com.
This is an English thing, but
Well, no, I think I got this figured out. Like I said, for me, this is usually a casual conversation. I'm guessing you're more used to something a little more formal. Is that accurate to say?
Yep. That's why I asked for questions, but you didn't send them, so I'm fine to do something more casual. But let's at least start with an introduction because that would set us off nicely. So just say welcome, Joanna, or something, and I'll say hi.
Okay. All right. I am with Joanna Penn, and I think I've thrown over a curveball this morning. So how you doing today, Joanna?
Thanks for having me on the show, Joshua.
Yeah. So I saw you, I think, doing something called Creative Friend. I think a friend of mine I can't remember if it was Mike Pilgrim or Jason LaBelle, I saw you doing a show. I was like, you'd be kind of neat to actually have on the show. So welcome aboard, and how's your day so far?
Good. Well, I'm in Bath in England, so I'm coming towards my late afternoon, which is I tend to get all my creative stuff done in the morning, so I do interviews and things in the afternoon. So I tend to split my time into creative time and marketing time. So you've got me in the afternoon slot, which is good. It's pretty hot over here actually right now.
Yeah, I know it's been kind of one of those unusual years in the sense that everywhere seems to be hot, but where I'm at, we had nothing. No, I like seriously. Like I looked at the weather worldwide. It's so that would be like 30, 35, 40 degrees Celsius, and where we were up until about 2 weeks ago, we had just rain, and rain. It's like everywhere else, scorched earth. Us, well, we had springtime for a very long time. So it's definitely a different time and era and things of that nature. For just Calgary just has weird weather. Like we have we're the only place I know that can have both rain and sun at the same time. Like it's sunny and you won't see a cloud in the sky, and it'll rain, and you're not sure where it's coming from, but it's coming from there. So I imagine that your weather is a little bit more regular.
Oh, well, it's England, but rain is good. Get a lot of work done.
Well, yeah, that's fair enough. So, you do your own show. But I'm going to start with your writing. How'd you get into writing? And how has that path of success, success led into your show?
I started writing back in 2006 when I started writing my first non-fiction book, which became Career Change. I was unhappy in my job and looking for a different life, and so I researched a lot about career change and then ended up writing that first book about the process. And in the process, I learned about the publishing industry, and I put the book out myself back before self-publishing was trendy, so back in 2007, 2008, before the Kindle, and just in the early days, like the iPhone, so very early in the sort of technology we know now. And in the process of putting that book out, I discovered I didn't know anything about marketing or sales or how to actually sell a book. I knew how to write one and publish one. So I started my blog, thecreativepenn.com, pen with a double N. And as part of that, I started a podcast very, very early in 2009, before it was even called podcasting. So basically, I've been doing this quite a long time. I did it as a side hustle for 5 years. And in 2011, I left my day job to become an author entrepreneur. And since then, I've written about 30 books, non-fiction for authors, and also fiction, different thrillers, dark fantasy novels. So it's been I guess at this point, quite a long journey. But you never know where it's going to go. You just have to take each step along the way.
Oh, absolutely. Well, for me, it was all an accident. Like, I never exactly planned on it. It was just kind of one of those things that one thing has led to another, has led to another, has led to another. I've just been going for the ride. I still have a day job at this point, but it's definitely less than it used to be. So I'm hoping one day to get to where you're at. So why did you go into writing? And why did you go with this path this early?
Sorry, why did I write?
Why did you choose writing? One. And two, you did a lot of stuff ahead of where everybody else was. Like, was just like an inspirational thing? Like, you just the way you want to go about it? Or was this like, to take like a swing at the bat, like baseball? Like, you just like, let's just go for it and see what happens?
Well, I chose writing because I guess that's my natural form of expression. I'm not a musician or a visual artist. I think you do comics. That's not one of my gifts. So writing words was something that I knew how to do. So I went that way, and I think everyone has their default mode of expression, and mine's definitely writing. And then I self-published because I was in Australia at the time, and when I'd written the book, I looked at the publishing industry and discovered it was going to take about 2 years for the book to come out, to go through all the process of getting an agent and a publisher and the publishing process. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going to wait that long. I'm going to do this myself. And I've always been someone who doesn't like to ask permission. I didn't like the power dynamics involved in publishing, where you had to ask someone to pick you, and that was never really me. And so this was around the time, I guess, the 4-Hour Work Week came out, Jack Canfield's The Success Principles, Gary Vaynerchuk's first book. So there was a lot of empowerment around internet, starting an internet business, reaching people online. Social media had just started, so I joined Twitter in 2009. Facebook was really moving into the mainstream. So I think it was a time of great change with internet marketing. Blogging was becoming a business thing rather than just a diary type of thing. And of course, podcasting, I set up a YouTube channel. So all of those things were very new at that point. I think that was the point where Lolcat's YouTube had just turned into more professional YouTube. So it was a cusp of change. And because I was in Australia and I wanted to reach Americans, I thought, well, because it's a much bigger market, I thought, well, this would seem a much better way to go about things. And yeah, so I just did it myself. So it really stems from, I guess, just being independent by nature.
So if you don't mind my asking, what was your day job prior to getting into writing?
I used to implement financial systems into corporates. So the last company I worked for was a mining company in Australia, but I also worked around Europe and Australia and New Zealand at lots of different companies. But I basically did that for 13 years in total. So it was a very highly paid consulting job, but it was not very creatively satisfying. But it certainly taught me a lot about business and gave me a very good lifestyle while I did it. And also I think is responsible for me deciding to make a big success of writing, because I always wanted a good lifestyle. I was never going to be a poor writer. So that has definitely driven me forwards as well.
Well, it's interesting because I've interviewed Kelly Armstrong and Fonda Lee and a few other well-known authors, and one of the things that I've noticed in the really successful authors seem to have in common is they do seem to have a big background in not necessarily your works, like where you were specifically, but there's definitely a corporate background. And I'm kind of curious, is like some of the skills, like I've noticed that a lot of bestsellers have in common is the discipline of going day in and day out, just doing whatever the task at hand. And I can't help but think that maybe your day job was probably some kind of, a lot of ways, training on how you operate now. You're a lot more creative now, and I feel a lot more and a lot happier now. But the lessons you learned back then have definitely impacted how you approach things today. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, although I think the work ethic aspect is a personality thing rather than what job you did. I mean, certainly if you find fulfillment in work and you want to work at something you love as opposed to something that just pays the bills, that's kind of how I have reframed things. Like, I've always enjoyed achieving things. I'm a very goal-orientated person, so changing my goals to be around writing rather than around a traditional career ladder as such is definitely what changed. But I think if you come from a corporate background, you just learn about money, and I think one of the reasons why authors and creatives don't earn enough money is because they don't engage with money and don't knuckle down and learn about things like taxes or business structures or accounting. The things, I mean, to be a full-time writer as I am is to all run a business as a writer. So you have to wear two hats. Like I said to you at the top of the interview, in the morning I wear my creative hat and I don't do anything to do with the business. And then in the afternoon, like today is actually the end of my first quarter accounting, so I had to do a whole load of accounting. And I mean, that is not sexy at all, but it is necessary to run a business as a writer. So I think being part of corporate means that you understand that there are things you have to do in order to be successful that you might not actually love. But if you do those things, then you get to spend the time doing the thing you love the rest of the time, which is very cool.
Very, very cool. All right, no, I'm just asking because it's just one of those things that I've noticed is just like the really successful people in this industry have a very, very good however they are successful. There's a lot of discipline in pursuing success. I find it's like I said, it's the ability of following through, but as you point out, it's understanding financial systems, understand how money works for you, and also just being really smart in marketing. But you did this really early in terms of when you got started. So what was the biggest surprise when you shifted? Going from your day job as you kept moving towards more and more into your writing career. Obviously, like there are curveballs that come your way. So, what curveballs did you find going into this that surprised you, and what were the stuff that really you enjoyed more, obviously, besides being more creative?
Well, if you mean when I went full time, so 2011 when I went full time, I think the surprise was that, as I just mentioned, the job of being a writer is not just writing. And what's so funny is one of the most common questions that I and other professional writers get is, how much of your time do you spend writing and how much of your time do you spend on marketing and business? And the question implies that we shouldn't be spending our time on marketing and business. And it's like, well, if you are running your business this way, then this is what you have to do. So when I left my day job in September 2011, I thought that I would just, go from being an office worker to working at home and writing lots of books, and everything would be marvelous, and I would make $1 million and I'd be famous and on TV, and everything would just be just like that's how it's meant to be in the myth of being a successful writer. I'd win some prize or whatever. And of course that didn't happen. And what was weird is that I thought I'm an introvert. I need a lot of alone time. I don't particularly like hanging around with a lot of people a lot of the time, and which is great for being a writer. But what was weird is I was working at home and I found myself getting quite lonely, so I ended up going to a library. I was living in London at the time, and went to the London Library, which is a private library. Bram Stoker used to write there, Dickens, people like that. So it was a very famous library in London, and so I started to go there every day, and that made a huge difference to my mental health. So I actually still commuted. I spent the first 6 months to a year commuting into the library, as I used to commute to my day job. Because I'd spent 13 years in a day job with certain routines, I had to keep to that routine to stop myself going mad. So that if people are looking to go full time, that's something I would definitely say, is make sure you have a structure for at least the first year of where you go. Maybe it's a co-working space, because you mentioned the discipline around writing. That wasn't a problem if I had somewhere to go. So it took it took a year, and now I'm working from my home office at the moment, but I still write my novels out at different cafes, co-working spaces. I dictate, so I never write my creative work at the same desk that I do my business stuff. So those are some of the things that you learn over time. You have to hack your process when you are, especially when you're an independent author. You don't have a contract with a deadline for your book. You drive yourself. You have to drive yourself, and it's less discipline as following your passion. I love doing this. I don't feel like I need discipline. It's what I love to do every day.
No, I get you. It's just like, that's interesting. So, I'm thinking about, as far as the library goes, do you still do that from time to time, or is that the place you still go, or do you have like a particular spot that you enjoy more?
I don't live in London anymore. I live in Bath, which is a few hours west. I've lived here for 4 years now. So that was really that first year that I needed that. And now I just write in cafes or co-working spaces.
Do you do writers groups at all?
No, as I said, I'm pretty chronic introvert, so I don't want a group. I don't really understand the idea of writers groups. Like, if you're going to write, then go write. I have lots of sociable things that I do with writers, but I don't do writing with other writers.
Oh well, yeah. It's part of that, as you say, that introvert thing. Like, a lot of writers tend to write, it's a lonely thing. So for what a lot of writers did then was just they get together so it wouldn't feel so lonely, and it's easier to write. That's the idea behind them. But to each their own. So here's the thing. I'm sorry, I'm a little dazed in the morning here. So here's the thing. I'm kind of wondering here. I'm sorry. So you've written 30 books. So where did your love of writing come from? Like from when you were a kid, just some like books you like to read, or did you stumble on, like, you chose writing as your profession later? So I imagine there was a love of it when you were younger in some form or some fashion.
Yeah, as I said, I think everyone has a default mode, and mine's writing. So I've always written journals and letters. And I did a master's in theology, so I wrote a lot of essays and dissertations, and then I became a consultant and wrote a lot of documents and technical things. So I've written, writing has been part of my life. It was just really then turning that into writing for publication, which is obviously a very different form of writing. Yeah.
Well, so you're talking about your theology. So you've always done writing, but I imagine like the writing you did, whether it was theology or technical, was there like a book? A lot of writers I know who I interviewed, like, usually go back to their love of things they read when they were younger. Like, obviously writing's been a whole part of your life. Was it just like, did you read, like was there any authors that influenced you that made you say, hey, I want to do this? Or it just completely, it was just, I've always written, I've always enjoyed this, let's see what I can do in fiction?
Well, fiction, I didn't start writing until later on. And really, so I've always written, non-fiction to me is not a difficult thing. But fiction, I didn't think I could write fiction. I've always read, love lots of authors. I read all the time. I read probably between 3 and 5 books a week. So I have so many favourite authors, I can never come up with 1 or 2. But I said with fiction, it was probably Dan Brown because I have an interest in theology and a background there, and I travel a lot. And what I really wanted to write was sort of a thriller with a sort of religious and historical and sort of travel-based themes. And then Dan Brown came out with the Da Vinci Code, and I was like, yeah, that's the type of thing I want to write. And so I guess he really inspired my Arcane thriller series, which is about a group of sort of secret agents who solve supernatural mysteries around the world. And then that kind of set me off. And there's 10 books in that series. And then I've got a crime series and also a dark fantasy series as well. So, and then some bits and bobs around the place. So I guess I just now find myself writing what I'm inspired to write. I definitely don't write to market or anything like that. So I just have an idea, and often it's by the place I'm in. I generally write around places, settings, and get ideas from my travels. So which is a happy thing.
Oh, absolutely. So I know Jonas Saul. Like he tends to write books from places he's lived, and he's had a very interesting, moving history. So, I mean, do any of your books based on where you live, or do you, or like it just strictly just travels?
So my book Risen Gods is set in New Zealand, where I lived for 7 years. I've lived in London for 5 years, and I have a London crime thriller series. The 3 books there are set, the places I love from when I lived there. My Matt Walker dark fantasy series is based in Bath, where I am now. So that's definitely inspired by moving here. And then all my Arcane books are inspired by places I've lived and worked and travelled over the years. So all around the world, really.
Okay, so I'm just going to ask this: do you ever see yourself moving elsewhere? Or are you content where you're at?
Well, I have moved pretty much every 3 years for my whole life, so I don't know. I mean, I'm always moving. I lived in New Zealand for 7 years, Australia for 5 years. I worked out in the Middle East. I went to school in Africa. I worked out in the US, and then I travel a lot. So I'm always moving as such. I definitely don't have a home in quotation marks. I've actually started a new podcast. So I have a podcast that's over 10 years old, the Creative Penn podcast, but my new podcast is called Books and Travel, and is all about books and travel. And one of the things is where people get their inspiration from. So I'm really loving that show because I get to talk about my own travels, but also other people's as well.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. I've moved quite a bit myself when I was younger, and I'm about to do another major move just literally in a few months. So it's always interesting to see. So So you're probably for sure going to be moving again somewhere down the road. Do you have an idea where, or is it just one of those things where you just kind of feel like just one day you just wake up and say, you know what, it's time for a change, and you just look around for where you feel like you next suits you, or just things happen?
Life happens.
I can understand that. I can totally understand that. So I won't ask next then. Where's next for you? Just wherever you go. Good luck. Do you ever actually, before we close this here, I guess I asked this. Do you ever see yourself kind of going to like maybe a phase of where you're always moving, like always traveling, or do you see yourself eventually settling down? It's like this is home. Do you see that day coming, or is it more you still got a long way to go?
I definitely do not want to be a digital nomad as such. What I find is I need to travel, and I love traveling for inspiration and work. I mean, I'm coming to America in a couple of weeks to Orlando. You're in Canada, I know, but over that side of the pond.
Yes, no.
I'm going to Orlando, and then I'll be back in Vegas, and I'll be in New Zealand, and then I'll be in Portugal, and that's all in the next sort of 3 months. But what I find is when I travel, I'm filling the creative well, but I'm not able to produce finished work. So I might write lots of journals while I'm traveling, but I won't be able to finish a book, or like I narrate my own audiobooks now, or I'm, writing the third book in my next trilogy. And so the word home is not as necessary. It's more just a stable base. And at the moment, I find when I'm back here in Bath, this is where I do my work. And then I travel out from here to get inspiration from the world. So yeah, I think the idea of being digital nomad is not something I want. I mean, I travel so much anyway, but I like to come back and then process what I've done and generally write a book about it. That's essentially how I do things.
Okay, so let's ask a fun question, and then we'll wrap this up shortly thereafter. I always have a tendency to believe that, because I like you, I agree that you should write basically what you feel inside, not necessarily writing to market. But I usually find that when we write stuff, there's usually a story behind the story, like whether our life stuff or just things that we feel really strongly about come out in our fiction, one way or the other. So if I were to pin you down, what do you tend to write about? Like, not just like the plots, but just the story behind the story. And lastly, how has your voice changed in the last 30 books?
Two really big questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll try. Well, I think I probably have different themes per series. So my Arcane series is always about where the line is between faith and, reality and belief and all of those questions, and science, and what is supernatural, what is just scientific. Is there another realm in the world that is not, that you can't see? And I'm not a Christian, and I don't have any religious adherence as such, but I definitely feel I'm spiritual. So those books are based on, generally, like the last book was about the Spanish Empire and Catholicism and stuff like that, but it's really interesting for me to learn more about it, and I absolutely respect people of faith. But yeah, I definitely explore those questions in the Arcane series. My Matt Walker series came out of the Brexit and Trump period of 2016.
Okay.
When those books are very much around borders and refugees and what happens when someone takes away your passport, which is what happened to us here in what I call Europe. So it's difficult. I definitely do think about those things, but in saying that, Map of Shadows, that book that I wrote in a very sort of angry state, is just a dark fantasy thriller about some young people crossing over a map into another world. So you can read it in a very simple way, or you can read it in a deeper way. And then in terms of how my voice has changed, well, I think we all become better writers I'm a better writer after 30 books than I was on book one. So you can find, a more nuanced voice perhaps as you get more experienced as a writer. But I still love that first book, Stone of Fire. It still gets good reviews. So even though I feel my voice has definitely changed and deepened, I'm still proud of what I started back then. And that book is full of a lot of me. All of them are, but I think our first novels often have a lot more of us in than the rest of it, because you use a lot of it up in that first book.
Well, it's because I think you just don't know what you're doing in your first book. You have something you really feel strongly about saying. I equate it kind of like a 5-year-old drawing of stick figures. Now, me and you could probably do a better stick figure drawing. Well, maybe I can't, but we might be able to do like technically a better drawing. But the 5-year-old's drawing will be better because at that time it's the best they can do. And I feel like our first books is our absolute best we can do. And as we learn more about the art form, we're technically better. I think there's something about that first voice, that first time, that's very unique. It stands out.
Yeah, I hope so. But I also think that my more recent books are probably more accomplished and are just as interesting in terms of the ideas. And I change. I don't write in one particular genre. I write in lots of different genres and work on lots of different things. So I think as long as we're growing and changing, our writing can grow and change with us.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. Well, Miss Joanna, I think we have an interview here. What do you think?
Great. Well, if anyone's interested in my podcast, it's The Creative Penn Podcast, and I'm at thecreativepenn.com if anyone wants to come on over.
All right. So I will plug that. But what about your current book, and how can people find you otherwise?
My current book, which is actually out tomorrow as we record this, it's Map of Plagues. It's a dark fantasy thriller, second one in the Matt Walker series, and that all my fiction is at jfpenn.com, F for Francis, or booksandtravel.page, where the podcast is and all the books.
All right.
And that was my conversation with Joanna Penn. You can check out Joanna's books, check out her website, and subscribe to her newsletter. Probably one of the best sources of how to do things as an indie author is Joanna. So Joanna, thank you very much for coming on my show. You are welcome anytime. Beyond all that, well, like I said, this is always time to be inspired. I have a couple of more things to announce this week. I do have giveaways this week. The giveaways are back. Doing something special this week. If you listened to last week, Jump Ship Hope by Adrienne Croft was spilled. I have the book that I spilled coffee on, a copy of it. It's actually in great shape outside. I have a little bit of a coffee stain on it. It's kind of memorable, though, so I feel it's worth giving away. So this week, I'm giving away a copy of Adrienne Croft's Jump Ship Hope, which will be launching September 29th at Owl's Nest Books. You can get an early copy now. All you got to do is put your name to the mailing list. I'm also giving away, since this is a video game week, I'm giving away a code for Giant Bearded Games, so that'll be definitely done this week as well. So just put your name in the mailing list. Finally, I'll be giving away a By Your Leave Unquiet Shadow as well. So those are the giveaways. Definitely put your email in the mailing list if you want to win, and that'll be it. All right. That's it for this episode of Just Joshing. If you want to support the podcast, you can do so a number of different ways. You can subscribe to the podcast. I am on Podomatic, Google Play, Spotify, iTunes. Listen, leave comments, share the word, however you can. That is greatly appreciated. Number one. Number two, support my sponsor, Indie Imprint. I'll have more sponsors in the month of September, more giveaways for the month of September as well. But for the time being, Indie Imprint's sponsors, you definitely should check them out. They are, if you are a creative, any kind, whether you're doing books, video games, music, they will help you. They'll help build and platform and promote it, edit it, everything. Definitely check them out. My books, Watch Your Storm Dancer, Wandering God, are available through Mirror World Publishing. My YouTube channel is Joshua Pentellaresco. You can subscribe there to get all the older interviews up on that. My Instagram and Twitter is at jpentellaresco. My Facebook page is Joshua Pentellaresco, author, podcaster. And beyond all that, guys, thanks for listening. Stay inspired. Keep doing your thing. And I'll see you guys next time.
Josh.